welcome to valuetrainings.com. So now we'll start with the more advanced topics of object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming is very important because the new version of Selenium, which is WebDriver, is purely object-oriented in nature. You have to learn the object-oriented programming in order to learn Selenium, in order to learn the architecture of Selenium. Okay, so until or unless you don't know the concepts of objects, interfaces and all, you cannot understand the architecture of Selenium. So we'll just work with the object-oriented programming. We'll start with the object-oriented concepts, and in this we'll see the local variables, global variables, static, non-static, constructor and all. Okay, so we'll just start with it. I'll open up my Visual Studio, and under this Oops Concepts project, I'll first of all add a new class that is static and non-static. Okay, right, now out here first of all I'll just add a main function to it, that is public static void main. Now we have initialized the main function. So over here this main is known as the static function. Now why it is called as the static function? Because static keyword is associated with this main function. Similarly, I can make my own static functions as well. For example, I make a function, say public static void sum. Okay, so this is also a static function, as static keyword is associated with this sum function. Okay, right, now what is static we'll just discuss in few minutes. And if I make a function, and if I make, say suppose, another function as public void print, now this function is a non-static function. Why? It is because we do not have any static keyword associated with this print function. Okay, and then similarly there are variables inside the class as well. So there are two types of functions. First one is the static function and another one is a non-static function. And then there are variables inside the class as well. There is something known as the local variable. For example, if I declare a variable as say int I is equal to 10, okay, then this variable is known as the local variable inside the function. Like this local variable can be accessed inside the, can be used inside that particular function only in which they are declared. Okay, and local variable can be in the static function as well as in the non-static function also. They can be in the static as well as in the non-static functions as well. So life of this a variable is only inside this print function only. Alright, so now and then there are something known as the global variables also. Global variables are present inside the class but outside the function. That is, they are present parallel to the functions in your class, and then they are generally declared on the top of the class only. On the top of the class, in the very beginning of the class. Okay, so global variables are something which are used across all the functions, but with some condition. They has to be used. Okay, so there are some conditions. If global variable satisfies that condition, they can be used across all the functions in your class. Okay, so say suppose I'll create a global variable, say out here inside my class, say string name it is. Okay, now string name is a non-static global variable. It is a non-static global variable. And similarly, if I write static int age, then this is a static global variable. This is known as the static global variable. So there are two types of functions, static function and a non-static function. And similarly, we have two types of variables as well, that is a local variable and the global variable that you declare inside your class. And then there's something called as the there's something known as the local variable, which is neither static nor non-static. You cannot declare the local variable as static or non-static. Right? If I declare the local variable as static, if I say static in front of this local variable, then you will get an error. You see that? The red line, it says the modifier static is not valid for this item. We will get an error. Alright. Okay, so we cannot have static local variables, static or non-static local variables. Now, what is static? You will get more clear when we'll work with the new class. Okay, and then we'll just explain when we will understand the concept of objects, how objects are created and how do we work with objects. Okay, now and then there are some rules associated with this static keyword as well. That is, static function can only access static stuff. Static functions can only access static stuff. Now, what do I mean by static stuff? That means it can only access the static global variable and the static functions. Static functions can only access the static global variables and the static functions only. Alright, that means I can call the sum function in my main function. I can call the sum function directly inside my main function, but I cannot call the print function in my main function. I cannot call this print function. You will get an error saying that an object reference is required for the non-static field method or property print. Since this print is a non-static function and this main is a static function, so static functions can only access the static stuff. It cannot access the non-static stuff. Okay, and similarly I can access the static variable age. Alright, I can access the static variable age over here in my main function, but I cannot access the non-static variable name. I cannot access the non-static variable name in my main function. You will get an error over here as well. So static function can only access the static variables and only call the static functions inside it. Alright, and then there is no rule associated with the non-static stuff. For example, say we have this print function with us, which is a non-static function. Right, okay, now out here if I try to print the same code over here inside my main function, then you see that we don't have any error. We don't have any error coming inside this print function. Alright, so the rule is static can access only the static stuff. But why it is like that? Let's go into the depth of this concept. For example, okay, so I'll just comment this part so that we don't get any error in our code. Alright, and then what I'll do is that say I'll create a new class in order to understand the concept of it. Okay, say suppose I create a class known as the car class. Okay, let's understand this concept in a more better way. Okay, so over here I have this car class with me. Now inside this car class, I will first of all declare some functions inside the car. Like what all can a car do? A car can start. Right, so I have a function known as public void start inside my car class. Okay, which is a, what type of a function it is? It is a non-static function. Start is a non-static function. Okay, and then similarly, say another function which a car can perform is public void accelerate. Okay, so we have another function with us, accelerate function, which is also a non-static function. Another non-static function. Now both are non-static functions. Start and the accelerated both are non-static function except the main function. That is, I'll also have my main function as well inside my car class, public static void main. Okay, so start and the accelerate both are non-static functions except the main function, which is the static function. Now why main function is a static function, we will discuss this as well in some time. Okay, now this car has two functions, start and the accelerate function, and it has got some properties as well inside it. Say suppose inside my class I have some properties of the class. Say we have the property as model of the class. Okay, then I have another property, the price, what would be the price of the class. Okay, and then another property, the wheels of the car. Okay, so these are some properties of the car class. And then what type of properties they are? They are the global variables. They are global variables that are there inside the car class. Now inside the main function, what you can do? We can do something known as creating the object of the car class. Creating the object of the class. Now how do you create the object of the class? I will create the object of my class by new car. So when you say new car, you create the object of your class in the memory. So what actually happens in the memory? What does it do? Let's look into that now. Now you can, and then you can create as many objects of the car class in a particular class. Now in the memory, what is going to happen is we have an object of the car class with us. Okay, and what all it contains? It has three properties with it, that is the model of the car, then we have the price of the car, and we have the wheels of the car. And then similarly it has two functions, the start function and the accelerate function of the car. Okay, so what will happen in the memory is that when I create the object of my car as new car, then there will be a memory location associated with that object in the memory, and in this object all the non-static stuff will reside. So it has all the properties, all the non-static, model, price, wheels, and the two functions, start and the accelerate functions, all of them being the non-static stuff. Okay, so non-static fields are present inside it. And if I create, say if you create three objects of the car class, if you create two objects of the car class, then all the objects will be occupying their memory inside, will be occupying their space inside the memory. Okay, now why do I say suppose I create another object of my car class? You can create as many objects of the car class in your particular class. Okay, now why is there a need to create the object? Say suppose I remove, why is there a need to create the object? Okay, that is, say if you write car C1 is equal to new car. When you say car C1 is equal to new car, then new car, this is the object of the car class. C1 is the reference to the object. C1 is not the object. Now some people make a mistake of saying that C1 is the object of the car class. No, it is not like that. C1 is not the object of the car class. It is the reference to the object of the car class. Okay, that means what will happen in the memory is we have this as the object of the car class, and then when you say C1 is equal to new car, then C1 is actually pointing to the object of the car. C1 will point towards that object in the memory. Alright, okay, and then with this C1 object you can access all the non-static things, that is the model of the car. Say suppose you give any model, say Maruti. Similarly, the price of the car, another non-static property, that is the price of the car, say anything it is. Okay, and then similarly we have another property which is the wheels of the car, say 4 it is. Okay, and then similarly we can access the functions as well, the start function and the accelerate function with this C1 object. Alright, okay, fine. And then similarly I can even create one more object of the car class, that is car C2 is equal to new car. And with this object of the car class as well, you can create any, like you can access all the non-static stuff again, that is say C2 dot model is equal to say Fortuner. Okay, and C2 dot price is equal to any price you give. Okay, and then similarly C2 dot wheels is equal to 4, and you call the two functions start and the accelerate function. Okay, right, so now what is actually there inside the memory is we have right now two objects with us. Okay, and C1 is pointing towards the first object and C2 is pointing towards the second object. This is your C1 and this is your C2 object. Okay, right, and then after that we can simply I can simply print C1 dot model. Okay, and similarly I can even print C1 dot price as well, and even all the properties associated with my car object. And similarly for the second car object as well, I can even print C2 dot model. Okay, and similarly if I want to print the price of the second car, that is C2 dot price as well. Okay, so if I print let's say I write console dot read key. Okay, and I'll just comment the main function of my previous class so that we don't get any error while executing with our function. Okay, and hold on, I'll just see all the main functions are commented fine. Okay, so now if I execute my car class, okay, it says build errors, which it says concepts car and the functions passed by values. Okay, in the functions we have the main function. Okay, I'll just comment this main function that is there inside the functions class. Okay, and now I execute my car class. Okay, so you see that it prints the model and the price of the first car class and the second car class as well. Alright, so there is a kind of virtualization among the objects when you create the objects of the class. Okay, so what we do is that we simply just create the object, we simply create the variable name, variable once, and then with the help of the object we can actually initialize every variable more than once. Okay, so right now I have just told you about the non-static stuff. Okay, now and then now as we all know that C2 has got 4 wheels with it, and then C1 has also got 4 wheels with it. Now say suppose tomorrow if you want to create 100 objects of this car class, then you will have to initialize each and every object again and again in all the 100 classes of the car class, in all the 100 objects of the car class. So inside my start function, say suppose I simply write model okay, is starting. Okay, and similarly I write in my accelerate function as well, model is accelerating. Okay, and then now when I run my code, when I run my code again, okay, so you see that it prints, it says Maruti is starting. So first of all it is Maruti starting. First of all, it like what we are doing, we are printing the model, we are printing the price, and then like I am calling the start and the accelerate function as well. So it calls the start function Maruti starting, Maruti accelerating, then it prints the model and the price, and then after that it does the same stuff for the second car object, that is the Fortuner starting, Fortuner accelerating, and then prints the model and the price of the second car object. Okay, right. So model of C1, that is like over here the model of the C1 class, the C1 object car C1, model of C1 car object is being printed, and first of all it will call this C1 dot start will call this start function, it will print model starting, then after that it will call the accelerate function of the C1 class, of the C1 object, accelerate function, and it will print model is accelerating, and then it will print C1 dot model, the model of the first object, and then similarly it will print the model of the second object, and then after that it will execute the same stuff for the second object. Okay, so this is the basic example of what an object is. Object is something which contains all the non-static stuff inside it. Alright, so this is what an object is. Now coming to the static, what is static? Now we all know, you know that all the cars gonna have four wheels with them. All the cars will have the four wheels. And whenever you create the object of this car class, you have to unnecessarily occupy the memory with the wheels variable. We all know that every car will have four wheels with it. So wheels is something which is common for all the objects. For all the car, wheels will be common. Okay, so what I will do is I will simply, that is what we have say right now we have two objects with us, and both the objects have property, the non-static property model, price, and wheels, and the two functions, start functions and the accelerate function, right? And similarly second class, second object also has the same property model, price, and wheels, and the two functions, start and the accelerate function. Okay, so we know that wheels is same for all the objects. So what I'll do is that I will simply remove this wheels from both the objects, rather from all the objects, and we will keep this wheels variable at a common memory location, and initialize it to both the objects, that is, and then I will initialize this wheels variable to 4. Okay, so that all the objects can access this wheels object, can access it from this common location where you will be storing your wheels variable. So how do I do it? I do it by making this wheels variable as static variable. By making this wheels variable as static variable, you like every object will be easily able to access this wheels variable from the common memory location. Okay, so now wheels will not be part of the object, it will not be a part of the object, rather it will be common for all the objects of the car class. Okay, it will be common for all the objects of the car class. So now will not create the wheels for each and every object again and again. It will now be the object of the class only, the car class only. Okay, so what we do, how we do it with the help of the static keyword. Now coming over to static. What is static? Like how do you, like how static is being implemented? Okay, now okay, so I have declared my static like wheels variable to static. Okay, and then I say static int wheels is equal to 4. Okay, so then now if you print the c1 dot wheels, okay, fine. So now when you say simply print the wheels variable, and then if you run your code, you see that it prints the value of the wheels, that is 4. Now a few minutes back I have just told you that static can only access the static things. It cannot access the non-static part. It cannot access the non-static stuff. Alright, and then if say suppose if I directly write console.writeLine price, if I directly write console.writeLine price, and then you see that you get an error saying that an object reference is required for the non-static field method or property price. That is, this price is a non-static field, and it says the object reference is required for the non-static field, this non-static field, because the price is non-static. We cannot access this price variable directly inside the static main function. Alright, so when we write wheels, when I declare the static variable, this wheels as static, we know that wheels is now not the part of the object. It has become common for all the objects. But when you print price, when you try to print the price, price is non-static. Right? It is non-static, so non-static has to reside in an object. Non-static is the part of the object only. So it gets confused which price are you talking about. So because of which you get an error below it. Okay, now we know that this start is a non-static function. So that's why we can access the model. You can access the model inside the start function. But static cannot access the non-static functions, non-static stuff inside it. Okay, right, and then you can access the wheels with the name of the car, that is over here. We will access the names wheels variable with the help of the class car dot wheels. So there are two ways how you can access the static variables, that is either you directly call the wheels variable or you access it with the name of the class. Alright, you access it with the name of the class. So static things cannot be accessed with the object. If you try to print the wheels variable with the help of object c1 dot wheels, and then you see that you will get an error. It says that the wheels cannot be accessed with an instance reference. Qualify it with the type name instead. That is, you have to qualify it with the name of the class. We cannot access the wheels variable, the static variable, with the help of an object. Alright. Okay, so this is how you access the static variables, either with the name of the class or you access it directly. Okay, right, so when all right, so this is how you do, and then say okay. Now if I say car dot wheels is equal to, say I initialize it to 8. Okay, and then when I print again console.writeLine, print the value of the wheels. So now when C1 goes and changes, like when car changes the value of the wheels variable, the wheels residing at a common memory location will move its position, which is like common for both the objects C1 and the C2 object. Okay, and then now if you try to print the wheels variable, so let's look at the output first. Okay, so now you see that for the first two wheels it prints 4 and 4, and then after that when I try to print the wheels variable again, it says that now the value of wheels is 8. So wheels is now has been changed to 8 since I have changed the value of the wheels to 8 with the help of the class. Okay, so wheels is static and static is common for all the objects. Okay, and then similarly I can make the functions, I can make static functions as well in my car class. Okay, and that function has to be called directly with the inside the main function. Say suppose you make a function, say public static void fill gas. Okay, that is a static function, and inside it you pass in the parameter quantity of the fill gas. Okay, pass on the quantity of the gas that you want to fill inside the car. Okay, and then you can directly call this fill gas function. That is, you simply call this fill gas function and you pass in the quantity inside this function. Alright, so and that is, you can directly call this fill gas function, or you can call it with the name of the car as well, with the name of the class also, and you send in the quantity inside it. Okay, so fine. So this is how you access the static things. That is, either you access it directly or with the help of the class name. Okay, and then non-static field has to be accessed with the object. With the object only, with the help of objects, you can access the non-static stuff. So till now we have seen what is static. We have seen the concept of static, and then why do we need static, and then why do you need the non-static stuff as well. Now what objects are, how can you create the objects, what are the advantages of objects, and okay, so this all we have seen till now. Now if you look at this main function, this main function is a static function. It is static in nature. Now we know that static things can be called with class name dot the variable name. Okay, so you can simply call the main function with the class name dot the function name. So when C# is executing your code, it simply calls the main function without creating the object of the class. And as it is being done, as you are able to call the main function without creating the object of the of the class, the compiler of the C#, it's not mandatory for the compiler to create the object of the class, and then it directly calls the main function. Alright, okay, so now let's move forward to why, like what is the difference between object and object reference. Okay, so I'll create a new class, that is test car. Okay, and inside this test car class, what you will do, like over here you can create the object of the car in this particular test car class as well, that is outside the class as well. Okay, so say I have a main function over here, public static void main, a static function, main function, a static function inside your test car class. Okay, and out here say I create the object of my car class, that is, you can create the object of your class outside the class as well. Okay, so this new car is creating the object of the car class. Now if I write car A is equal to new car, car A is equal to new car. So A is the reference to the object of the car class. Okay, that means in the memory we have we have this as the object, and A is pointing towards this object of the car class. Okay, similarly I can create more objects of my car class. Say car B is equal to new car. Similarly I have car C is equal to new car. Okay, fine. So what you have, so you have three objects with you, that is three objects. Fine. Okay, and then first object, like A is pointing towards the first object, B is pointing towards the second object, and C is pointing towards the third object. Alright, okay, so this is what is done. And then after that, and then you will see the references as well. That is, if say suppose I write a dot model, okay, I'll just make it as public so that we can access it outside the class as well. And public, okay, and then now if I try to access a dot model is equal to any model you give, okay, and similarly I give b dot model is equal to any model, and similarly I give c dot model is equal to any model, okay, and then you can print the values as well. That is a dot model, then we have b dot model, and then I print the model of the third class as well, okay, and then if I try to print my code, console dot read key, and I'll just comment this main function of my car class. Okay, and I execute my test car class. So you see that it prints the model of all the three classes, will print the respective model of the car. Now here comes a little complex thing, we'll just look into that. Okay, now if say suppose if I write a is equal to b, b is equal to c, and c is equal to a. Now what this will do, what modification will it do? That is, if we look into it carefully, that is, we have three objects with us. Now when you write a is equal to b, that means the a reference, so right now a is referencing to the first object, a is pointing towards the first object. When you write a is equal to b, the a reference will be removed from here and it will point towards the object where b is pointing. That is, now a will point towards the second object. Alright, okay, and then when you write b is equal to c, so b will stop pointing towards the object where it is pointing right now and it will point towards the object where c is pointing, that is, it will point towards the third object. Fine, okay, and then when you write c is equal to a, so c will stop pointing towards its object where it is pointing, and then a is pointing towards the second object, so c will also point towards this second object. Alright, and after that if you try to print again the model of all the classes, of all the objects, that is, it is a dot model, and then similarly if I print b dot model and I print c dot model. Okay, fine. So now if I execute my code again, so now you see that it prints b, c and b. It prints b, c and b. Right, you see that it prints B, C and B. That is, for the first line A is equal to B. So what was happening was it is like A is now pointing towards the second object. So the second object's value is B. The first object has the A value, the second B, and the third as C. So when you write A is equal to B, the value of A will now be equal to B. A is pointing towards the second object. Okay, and then the second object now, and then B is pointing towards the third object which has the value as C, and then C is pointing towards the second object which has the value as B. Alright, so it prints, it gives you the output as B, C and B. So that means object remains constant in the memory at a particular reference, at a particular location, but the object references keeps on changing. Alright, Okay, and this object has got no object reference, so you cannot, like, it cannot be accessed. It will be destroyed in the memory by the C# by a mechanism called as the garbage collection. So no need, like, it cannot be accessed, so no need of it. Just destroy that. Why to keep the memory occupied by keeping this memory or this object in the memory? Okay, so this is a very simple object, a very simple concept example of the object reference. All right, okay, and then say suppose if I write say a dot model is equal to anything, say if I write, and if I write okay, and then if I try to print a dot model, similarly I print b dot model, and I print C dot model. Okay, so now we know that the values of A and C are same. Okay, so if the value of the A changes, then C will also change. If the value of A changes, then C will also change, right? So when you run it, you see that it prints ZZZ, C, and ZZZ. This ZZ is printed 2 times. Okay, so that means if an object is there in the memory, if you have an object in the memory, okay, and it has got more than one reference associated with it, which it can, and if any one of the reference changes the value inside that object, then the value is updated for all the objects. It will be updated for all the objects in the memory. Okay, so this is what is the concept of object and object references. All right, so now let's see another concept of a value and a reference. So I'll create a new class into my project, that is point class. Okay, and inside this, say I initialize 2 variables, int a and int b. Okay, that is say suppose these variables denote the x and the y coordinates of a particular point. Okay, and then say I have a function inside this class, say public static void swap. Okay, and then it accepts 2 parameters, int x and the y variable. It accepts 2 parameters inside it. So this, what this function will do, this function will swap the 2 integers x and the y. That is, when the value will be sending into a x variable, that value we have to put in the y variable and vice versa. Okay, and then similarly I'll have one main function into my class, public static void main. Okay, and then inside this class, say I create the object of this point class, point p is equal to new point. Okay, and then you say p dot a is equal to say 100, and similarly I say p dot b is equal to say 200. Okay, and then you print the values p dot a and the p dot b variable. Okay, and then I call, say suppose I call in this swap function and I pass in the variables p dot a and p dot b. Okay, so p dot a will go into the, it will go inside the x variable, and p dot b will go inside this y variable, will go into b. Alright, and then inside my swap function, what I will do, first of all I'll keep the backup of my first variable, that is int temp is equal to x. Okay, and then I say x is equal to y, and then I say y is equal to temp. Okay, that is through this logic the value of the x and the y would be swapped, and then after that if I try to print the values of the a p dot a and the value of the b variable, if you try to print it, okay, and then now if I execute my code, I'll just comment this main function. Okay, and okay, I'll just write console.read key, and if I execute my code, okay, so you see that the swap is an unsuccessful. I was expecting first of all we should get 100 200, and then after swapping you should get the result as 200 and 100, but the swap is unsuccessful. As we can see over here, we are getting the same output for after performing the swap also. X remains, like a remains 100 and b also remains 200. That is, the concept is very simple based on the object reference, the same concept. That is, over here what we have one object of the point class, okay, right, and inside this we have initialized two variables, a and the b variable, okay, fine, and p is pointing towards this object. P is like it, we are giving it a reference of the p variable, okay, fine, and then after that I am passing p dot a into an integer variable x and p dot b into an integer variable y. Alright, I am passing p dot x into an integer variable a and p dot y into an integer variable b. Right, and I am creating a memory space, that is x, and a memory space y, and then this a this a is passed into the memory location x and b is passed into the memory location b, and then swapping is actually done between these two variables x and y. Swapping is actually done between these two variables. A and b remains the same. So when you perform the swapping, it like x and the y values are swapped. P dot a and p dot y, it remains same. So when you are printing p dot a, you are printing p dot a and p dot y. So this is the reason why swapping is not done. Alright, so that is what you have to do is you will have to swap the values of the a and the b variables, instead of this x and the y variables. Alright, okay, so for that what we will do is I will create one more function, that is public static void swap vals, okay, and inside it I will pass the reference of my point class, pass the object reference of my point class, okay, and inside it I will say int temp is equal to t dot a, okay, and then you say t dot a is equal to t dot b, and then similarly t dot b is equal to the temp variable, okay, and then inside your main function you will simply call this swap vals function and we will pass the object of our point class. Okay, right, so I'm keeping every function as static function since main is a static function and static functions can only access the static stuff. Alright, okay, so there is a difference between both these functions, swap and the swap vals function. In this function you are passing the values. In this you are passing the values, and in this function we are passing the object reference p into the t. We are passing the object reference p into the t. Alright, so now what will happen in the memory is we have this as the object of the point class, like P is pointing towards this object. So now another reference T will also point towards the same object, and with the help of T I am swapping the two values. Alright, so now you can print the two values. That is, if you write console.writeLine p.a and p.b. Alright, and then now if you run your code, you see that the values would be swapped at the third time, because when the T reference changes the values of the A and the B, P reference gets also changed, gets also the updated value. So T is actually changing the value of the A and the B variable inside it. Okay, and then this is the difference between the pass by value and the pass by reference. So this function is a pass by value, example of the pass by value function. Alright, and swap vals, this is a example of the pass by reference. Okay, objects are always passed by reference only. You can pass the object reference into the functions as well as the input parameters. Fine. So this was all about the object and object reference and pass by value and pass by reference. So now let's move towards one more concept, that is constructor. A very important, and again a very important concept to what is a constructor. So for that also I'll add a new class, constructor. Okay, and inside this constructor class I will add a main function, public static void main. Okay, and inside this main function, say I create the object of my car class, say car A is equal to new car, and say I create one more object of my car class, car B is equal to new car, and similarly I create one more object, car C is equal to new car. I create three objects of my car class. So when you are initializing three objects of the car class, then you have to initialize all the properties of the car class as well. That is, you say simply a dot model and you give any model inside it, that is say Audi. Okay, and similarly if I give the price of it as well, any price you give. Okay, fine. Then similarly we'll have to initialize the same thing for the second car as well, b dot model and then b dot price. Okay, and then similarly for the third class as well we'll do the same stuff. Okay, now suppose instead of the two properties there are 20 properties of the objects. Now whenever you are creating an object, you have to initialize these 20 lines again and again. So it becomes a kind of an overhead for us, that you create the object and we have to write the separate lines to initialize the properties inside the object as well. So that is why we use the concept of constructors in the object oriented programming. Alright, so in my car class, say suppose I create a main function over here. Say suppose in my car class, I will make a constructor. Out here, say I create a constructor of my car class. Now what is a constructor? Constructor is something which is having the same name as that of the class name. That is, we have say public car, and constructor, like it will look similar to the function, but it is not a function. No static, no return type, no void, nothing it has, no non-static, nothing it has. It has only the access specifier and the same name as that of the class. Okay, so car has got its constructor, and okay, that is a constructor we have declared of the car class. Okay, now when you create the say suppose this constructor accepts two parameters as well, say string m, and we have another parameter, say integer p. Okay, we have two parameters. Okay, and then out here if I say write model is equal to m and price is equal to say p. Okay, fine. And then if I uncomment this main function of my car class, I'll just uncomment this. Okay, so now when you create the constructor of the car class that accepts two parameters, then you see that you start getting an error in the main function of the car class. You start getting an error inside the main function. Alright, so what we will do, we'll just look into this as well. Right now what I'll do is that, say I'll just comment this constructor of my car class. I'll just comment this constructor of my car class, and rather we'll make another constructor called as like public car, a parameter less constructor of my car class. Okay, that is will not pass any arguments inside this car on this car class. And say if I write over here in the constructor, okay, fine. Now you are just writing in constructor, and then out here say inside my main function. Okay, and out here say I'll just comment this main function of my constructor, and then you have this as well, main function. Will just comment this, and say suppose if I execute my code. Now over here you see that it prints in constructor two times. Now when you are calling the when you are creating the object of your car class, you are calling this new car. So what is actually happening is it calls this constructor of this car class. When you say new car, it is actually calling this constructor of the car class, wherein it prints in constructor two times, since you are creating the object of the car class two times, so it calls the constructor. Alright, so as soon as you create the object of the car, the constructor is called. This constructor is called, and it will print two times. And then similarly, we can make a constructor with different arguments as well. That is, say I have this constructor as well of my car class, which accepts two parameters, m and the p, string and an integer variable inside it. Okay, so this concept is known as method overloading. It is known as overloading. That means same name, same function name, but different parameters inside it. Okay, right. This is known as the function overloading, or else you can say the constructor overloading. That is, we have same name but different parameters. If you pass in the same parameters inside this car constructor, then you will get an error. Okay, so constructor is different from a class. It does not have any return type inside it with it. Then what is the role of the constructor? Well, constructor will help you initialize the objects. You don't have to write c1.model, c1.price, c1.start, this unnecessary lines again and again. We'll tell you how we can avoid writing this. Okay, so in my constructor.cs class file, say suppose I can create a car object over here. Say if I uncomment this code of my constructor class. Okay, and then say I have say I create the object of my car class, car x is equal to new car. Okay, and inside this I pass the two parameters over here. Say you have BMW, the model name, the model, and you have to give the price over here. Okay, say I pass two parameters inside it. So over here you can pass the parameters, okay, that is this car, since we have created the constructor of the car class which accepts two parameters. So based on that only I am passing two parameters inside my car. Okay, fine. And then if you write car A is equal to new car, then this car will actually call this constructor. This is a parameter less constructor, and then when you say car A is equal to new car, then this car is actually pointing towards this constructor. In constructor it will print, okay, will point to the constructor which is accepting no parameters, and this constructor, this car, will point to the constructor which is accepting two parameters inside it. Alright, okay, and then say if I print x dot model and simply I print x dot price, okay, and I'll just comment this main function of my car class, okay, and then if I print it, okay, I'll just comment this since we don't have any b variable, fine, okay, I'll just write console dot read key, okay, and then I'll execute it again. So you see that it prints for x dot model BMW and the x dot price it prints, and then after that I am calling the constructor of my like I am calling a parameter less constructor. I'm just initializing car A is equal to new car, and then inside this parameter less constructor you are printing in constructor. So for that it prints in constructor line. Alright, okay, so this is how you create the constructor and you call the constructor. So now you can create the object of the class and initialize the non-static part as well, and in Selenium as well we'll be making the constructors and working with the constructors. Okay, and then in Selenium we will be actually making the object of the classes which are predefined. Okay, now one more concept. Now over here, say suppose instead of m, if I write model, and for instead of p if I write price in my this car constructor, okay, and then I say model is equal to model, and similarly you say price is equal to price. Okay, fine. Now this model and price, these are the local variables. This model is a local model variable, and we have price is a local price variable. But on the left hand side, these are global model and the global price variable. Okay, and then when you run, and then now when you run your code, you simply get the output as null and a zero value for it. That means model is null and price is zero, because over here C# thinks that equate the local variable to local variable, and the local model variable to local model variable, and local price variable to the local price variable. Global variable never comes into picture. These global variables never come. So local variable is actually hiding the global variable, because the name of both the variables are same in this case. Alright, so in this case what we do, we simply give this dot model, and we give this dot price. So this dot model means model of the car, this model of the car, and this dot price model of the the price of the car class. Okay, now what is this? This is the keyword which will always point to the current object wherever your object is being called. Is object is calling the constructor. Okay, so this is what it is. Fine, so these are so this is all about the fundamental concepts of the OOPS, and we are done with the OOPS concepts. Fine, and then before actually ending up with this, we'll just see a small example of how objects are used in Selenium as well. Alright, so say I'll add a new class, and we'll not go into deep right now. We'll discuss with it in the coming classes. That is, say I create a class Selenium Basic, and inside it I will first of all include I will configure Selenium inside my code, so that we can I'll just tell you how Selenium actually works, and will not go into depth of it. Okay, so just hold on, we'll just configure Selenium over here. Okay, and then over here I will say add a main function, public static void main. Alright, okay, and then in my main function I will make the object of an inbuilt class in Selenium, that is say Firefox driver, and will create the object of this driver, Firefox driver class, by Firefox driver is equal to new Firefox driver. And when you run this much of the code, say if I run this much of my code, okay, so what this will do is this will simply open the browser. It will simply open a Firefox browser. Okay, hold on, we'll just see. It will open the Firefox browser in some time. Okay, alright, so you see that it opens up a blank Firefox browser before us. Fine. Okay, and with this object of the Firefox driver class, you can have lot of non-static functions with it. So as we proceed with the course, we'll work with all these functions. Okay, which like we will be studying in the course. Okay, that is, and one among them we have driver.url. If you want to navigate to a particular web page, then you simply give the URL over here, that is say gmail.com. Okay, so this driver.url, it will simply navigate the browser to the Gmail website. Okay, so this is where C# is important, and you know what Firefox driver class is doing. It is simply creating the object of the Firefox driver class, and we are opening the Firefox browser, and with this object we can fire many functions, the one among them being the URL function, and then we'll also see many other functions as well. And similar to the Firefox driver, we have many classes as Chrome driver, Internet Explorer driver, Safari driver, Android driver, and many more. And then we'll look into all this in more detail in the coming classes.